So today, the news reported, but honestly, they were 2 weeks late on this. So this is referring to 858 as we all know it, because people saw the new Terminal 2 EDS. So yeah, I'm just gonna recommend a few services that can take advantage of this. The first one is 62. Geylang Road, Lorong 1 Geylang, go in and then come out. Loop back. Actually, that's not accurate. It's more of like go in, come out, like this. And then you swap out your bus drivers at this terminal. Same concept at Harbourfront, especially those that exceed 2 hours, like this one. Go in, come out. Go in, come out. Change your bus drivers here. I mean, at the interchange. But you realize the issue with this is that Harbourfront Interchange is all end-on berths, which means like the buses, they park like this, which means you kind of have to waste lots in order to do this. This would have been actually possible if Harbourfront Interchange was designed with like sawtooth berths instead. So they can do something like, Service 3 at Pasir Ris or like 265 at Ang Mo Kio, that kind of style. I mean the interchange. If that doesn't work, then you could choose to call these bus stops instead. And I honestly think that this is like a much better idea because if you actually make 30 and 61 like, go one big round over here, you have to skip this bus stop. Because if you realize like stuff like 65, 855, 123M, service 80, they all have to skip this bus stop because of the right turn filter. And if you make them like, as in like, if you make this one and this one go all the way inside, then you have to compromise this bus stop. So that's the downside of it. Because at the end of the day, your main aim is to not make the bus drivers drive more than 2 hours. So another one that I can think of is 51. So 51, you could actually do this for both bounds. So Victoria Street, you call this bus stop. I mean that's 51's calling stop. You go one round like this, and then continue towards Hougang. And Jurong eastbound, you could do North Bridge Road, Arab Street. There is enough right turn filter, so do this, like this, and then like this. You don't compromise any stops. You just give the bus drivers a place to rest at Queen Street Terminal. I don't know the fate of Queen Street Terminal like in the future, but it's like if you want to do this in the name of like bus captain welfare, then yes, you can think of something like this. Going back to this, you can also consider it for Service 21. Again, same concept. Like this, go in and then okay, how do you actually okay, it's possible. Like Pasir Ris bound, like this, like this. It is possible. Also keep in mind that this, 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 and this bidirectional on paper, but in practice, like operationally, they are loop services. So these two they loop at Boon Lay, and these two they loop at Toa Payoh. So what I was told by other people is that 163 you can actually park here for a little while. It's like The layover time is like quite pitiful, but at least there is still like some form of like layover time. 195, the BC just parks like along here, I think. And what they do is they park, they go for their toilet breaks, and then they come back, and then they have to drive back to Sengkang, which is uh, it's not good when it comes to like welfare. So you want to do the crew layover without bus, which is the official term for jump bus. You just simply make them change drivers at Toa Payoh interchange. You don't necessarily have to do that for Boon Lay because these two are like under 2 hours, like from Tuas to Boon Lay and then back to Tuas. But I would highly recommend doing this for like 159 and 163 because unofficially they are loop services, and then the same bus driver has to like drive the bus back to Sengkang. And kind of the reason with this is because these two, if I'm not mistaken, they are purely Hougang Depot control. I mean, in the past, now I think it's like Sengkang West Depot. They're purely controlled by that depot. So yeah, that's why they do this kind of like loop shenanigans. Yeah. And the same thing kind of applies for like bus services that, I mean, generally they loop inside the interchange. These you don't have to worry about. 173, I think you could implement it if you want, but this one's not really like a big issue or anything. The main issue is with 965, and I will tell you why. This is because you know Sengkang, it the interchange it belongs to SBS Transit. I don't think it belongs to LT. It should be SBS Transit's like property, and they are like very territorial when it comes to Sengkang, cause I mean they own the interchange, and the office whenever they see like a 965 bendy bus come in, they would be like they would lose their mind basically. And I was also told that like for 190, SMRT actually has to um, declare the timings that the bendy buses on 190 arrive into the interchange. They can lay over there for 190's case, but they have to declare the timings that the bendy buses go in. Go out, I don't think so, but it's like going in, so that SBS Transit is like they are like well aware. And they do this because it's like again, SBS Transit tends to be very territorial when it comes to like their space. Kampong Baru, I don't know who it belongs to, but again, it's more of the territorial issue. So because 965 isn't operated by SBS Transit, it was never operated by SBS even back in the day because it was a 2000s era service. I mean, anything that starts with 9 historically never belonged to SBS. It's same for most of like the 800 bus services. So yeah, because this involves like PTO negotiations between I mean between PTOs. I don't know what I'm talking about. Basically, you have to negotiate if you want to like do the cloud bus thingy. I mean, I don't think you actually have to go to that extent, but you know, it's just SBS Transit being territorial with stuff. But I would imagine, uh, yeah. Okay, and the reason why I even brought this up was because you have to station the bus captains to wait at the 965 berth. And I don't know if SBS Transit would be happy with this or not. Because I don't even know if this one is actually an initiative by the bus enthusiasts, that whole squad uh, that manages like 858, 965, 969, even though that's not a loop service and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know whose initiative was this to like cut down the bus driver hours. to like below 2 hours. But yeah, okay, I don't know who started it, the initiative. But in the case that it is actually started by them and not actually by LTA, then if it's started by PTO staff, then they have to negotiate when it comes to like, hey, I will have a staff member from my PTO. We would stand there and wait for our turn to drive the bus, stuff like that. You gotta negotiate with SBS Transit. It's a pain, but you gotta do it. But the one benefit I can see from this is that this one technically you no longer have to like extend it to Buangkok. So the thing about Buangkok ITH and 965 is that what I was told was that 965 was one of the services that had been considered to extend to Buangkok, but because there is like actually demand inside Sengkang, they chose not to do it. Like they chose not to make 965 into like a 265 style service that calls at Sengkang interchange, because you would need another berth for like, I mean, you need one berth for like Woodlands bound and then another berth for like Buangkok bound if you were to do that. So making 965 cloud bus at inside Sengkang interchange, it has its benefits. Like in this sense, I mean 39, the amendment to Tampines North got rejected because of a different reason. But okay, in this one's case, in this case, they simply rejected it because of, it is low key because SBS Transit is being territorial kind of thing. This is kind of unrelated to the video, but in case you're wondering what territorial in this context means, okay, there used to be a thing whereby 965 and 969, cause 965 takes the shortest route from TPE to Sengkang interchange, and before the Tampines Concourse amendment, 969 had to beeline express all the way from TPE using Avenue 12, 9, 7, Central 3, and Central 1 to reach Tampines. It had to take the most direct route in. These things, they are allowed to wind inside like Yishun, Khatib, and stuff like that. And then on the other hand, the same applies for 161 and 168. You know, 161 from Hougang, they had to like, no, no, not had to like, I mean, 161, the route was like something like this. They could whine as much inside their own territory, but when it comes to Woodlands, both of them have to use Woodlands Avenue too, because that's like the fastest way. They are not allowed to like whine and okay, so these two are not allowed to whine inside Woodlands. This one is not allowed to whine inside Sengkang. This one is not allowed to whine inside Tampines. This is what being territorial means, cause it's like when they introduce these new bus services, and I mean these two, they were relatively new as well. They couldn't eat into the competing operators like territory when they want to send a new bus service into their area. They have to like kind of negotiate. So when it comes to negotiating like this inside the interchange, even Kampong Baru terminal as well, they have to negotiate things like this. And if you're curious, 67 kind of takes like the most direct route. I mean, technically the most direct route would be Avenue 4, but like it uses Avenue 1 and 5. But this one, the rule doesn't necessarily apply to 67 because 67 used to be under SBS until like 1999, I think. So it used to be their own service before it handed over to TIPS. So this one doesn't really apply to 67, even though it kind of like follows a trend inside Tampines. But you can also say that like 67 SMRT is not allowed to amend it in such a way. I mean, before LTA took control of the services, they weren't allowed to like amend 67 in a way that would so-called steal the demand from SBS side. Like they're not allowed to send it via avenues like 1, 8, and 5, duplicating 69, or they are also not even allowed to send it via avenues like 129 or 127, Central 3, Central 1, they're not allowed. They have to take like SMRT is not allowed to amend 67 inside within Tampines, and even within Bedok to a lesser extent. I mean, when they took over the service. Also, on a side note, this is not related to BC welfare, but like 969 used to have a rule that like you need to have at least one bus inside Tampines interchange. So it's like, how do you put it? Like one bus comes in, only when this bus comes in and this bus like parks here can your 969 actually depart. There has to be at least one 969 ready to depart Tampines interchange. Because I think SMRT they wanted to like control the frequency of this service, but it ended up backfiring. Thankfully nowadays this rule isn't really in place, but yeah. But the implications are that like it could compromise or in some cases like lengthen bus captains like layover time, depending on if there is like another 969 inside the interchange. They didn't do this for 67. It was only a thing for 969 because 969 the express sector was like from you have to understand that back in the day the last bus stop was like Lentor Avenue. It doesn't call Jalan Kayu, and TPE bus stop did not exist back then. Tampines Concourse, like the HDB estate, did not exist back then. It was just grass. From Lentor Avenue to Tampines Interchange, it was express all the way. That's why 969 they had to do this kind of rule. So yeah, like I understand like why they made this rule, but unfortunately it ended up backfiring and actually made 969's frequency a lot worse. I'm not even surprised that like sometimes the bus captains are like forced to immediately depart, which kind of ties into what I'm about to say because a lot of the UPD services or like Hougang Depot bus services now it's Sengkang West. These bus services they do not have enough like layover time except meal break. It's like you give them like I don't know 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That's not enough. At the bare minimum, you're supposed to give them 15 minutes of break time, but I would give them around 20 to 30 minutes. So yeah, it is not just driving for more than 2 hours. Even if it's like less than 2 hours, you gotta give your bus captains like enough break time. As to why these services even looped inside the interchange, it is mostly because of space constraints, not enough parking lots, and in some cases, it might have it has got something to do with like the territorial thing. It's like the negotiations. It's like if you own the bus interchange, like you gotta designate them to your own services. If another PTO wants to use them, you gotta negotiate. And more often than not, in the case of like 173 at Clementi or like 965 at Sengkang, stuff like that, you're not able to use the space because it's already taken up by the incumbent operator, stuff like that. I mean, this case it's different because these routes are like quite short and there's no real reason to like terminate them. That's why they are loop services. I mean, this one inside Bedok interchange back then before the amendment. So yeah, but I do understand that like sometimes if you're like late beyond belief, then a part of the route's frequency might be compromised. So like let's say you arrive at Bukit Merah interchange late, and instead of having to do the full trip, sometimes they would like, you know, have mercy on you. You would actually be able to score a down route. So you drive less to compensate for you being late. And I think back in the days, some of the BCs they thought their runtime was like way too tight, and then they kind of like they drove as slowly as possible in order to like score a down route or just drop the trip altogether, like in a way force them to drop the trip. It's quite bad honestly, but I'm just trying to say that like in terms of BC welfare, these things have happened before. And I think currently a lot of the BCs on like 979, they are like they don't even care about their runtime anymore because their overtime hours they got cut, even though they actually need the overtime hours, as in the BCs from foreign countries like China. They're really hardworking. They like need the money to send back to their families, but because their OT got cut and as a silent protest, they just drive as fast as they want. So yeah, that's equivalent to like going rogue, but it's in a way sort of justified. So yeah, just putting it out there.